Hello, and welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
This is the podcast about murders and so much more. We will talk about anything strange, anything that goes bump in the night, and pretty much anything that amuses us.
And on that note, we need to mention that this podcast is not safe for work or delicate ears, so do be discerning who you listen to it with.
We also want to let you know that you can find us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram, so look for us there.
I am Shannon Lawrence. I am a writer, mom, wife, student, procrastinator, and you can find me at thewarriormuse.com.
My name is MB Partlow. I am a writer, an avid reader, an organizer extraordinaire, a mom to kids, cats, and a dog, and I call bullshit when I see it. We have to be very serious.
All right, it's time to be serious.
It's time to be serious.
Serious intro, serious show.
People are like, oh my God, I've downloaded the wrong podcast. You probably have.
That's right, but keep listening.
Keep listening because you will adore us by the end. They will.
Okay.
Some of them adore us already.
And we appreciate that.
We do.
I do appreciate that.
We bask in the adoration of our fans.
Oh my God. That's a little dramatic.
If you hadn't laughed, I could have kept a straight face when I said that.
I don't believe you.
Well, we'll never know now.
No. Well, so what have you been up to?
I watched Loki. I wanted to say it first.
Rude. I did too, just last night.
I just watched it the other night. I was so mad because when we talked about it the first time, I went home all excited. I poured it, gonna have a glass of wine, gonna do my nails. Because I do that in front of the TV. So I get downstairs. I can't find Loki anywhere. I go stomping up the stairs because, a computer is too easy. Why use my cell phone? So I go stomping up the stairs and I find the newspaper and I'm like, oh, it starts on Wednesday.
I know. Then you messaged me.
Yes.
I was wrong.
But it reminds me, was it WandaVision on Wednesdays?
Yeah, probably.
I think it was.
And I don't watch Falcon and Winter Soldier, so
no.
I don't know what days those are on. But
I don't either.
What'd you think of Loki?
I really liked it.
I was, at the very beginning, I started laughing. I was like, oh my God, that's the perfect way to take Loki down. Bureaucracy.
Yep.
You take a ticket. There's only one other person here.
And the big long line.
Yes, it's in the winding. And then I just he's just glaring at the guard. And the guard's not even, after he does what he wants, he's like, no. And he's not even looking at him. He's just going around the thing, glaring at him.
and the hand gestures. And somebody goes, what is he trying to do? He's trying to use his god powers. And they're just, yeah, that's not going to work here.
No, sorry. Yeah, I'm hoping that he doesn't remain neutered, because that's one of my big things with the show. It's why I stopped watching Lucifer, is I was like, it's not funny when frickin' Lucifer is neutered and he can't do anything, and he needs to be able to do it, and he needs to have that mischief, because I like a trickster god for the mischief.
Yes, or unless they're so goobery in love that they become a totally new person and they're good now.
Yeah, I don't like it.
That's boring.
Because I like the ones that are a little bit naughty. It's why Iron Man is my favorite superhero. Yeah. He's a little bit naughty.
But the best thing is, I don't know why, watching Loki made me Google Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
And there is this clip of him on a chat show in Great Britain dancing. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Oh, we need to post it.
He's so fun. And he's like Hugh Jackman, where he looks so serious in movies. And then when you see him in like an interview or something like that, they have the most wonderful, charming, huge, boyish smile.
Yes.
Yes. I love it. So, yeah.
We have to.
It's why they're perfect for the mischief. But,
and I was just like, look at him cutting a rug.
I know. He does. He just does his thing, and you're like, all right, you go.
It's got some fancy footwork.
Yeah. And just adds to the allure.
It does.
Of course.
And then I had to watch another one of Benedict Cumberbatch dancing.
Oh.
Which
he doesn't do anything for me.
But it was amusing to watch the dance, because he can cut a rug as well.
Yeah, I've watched Jensen Ackles sing and dance.
Yes. Well,
that's plenty for me. Oh, look at that. They got a whole break of an episode from me being a dirty middle-aged woman.
Well, with
sorry,
tits and
not
ankles,
sorry.
I mean, it just is.
But he can really sing.
Yep.
Anyway. I've also been watching Ugly Betty. Did you ever watch that?
I did not.
It was one of those ones where, again, I heard about it so much that I was like, whatever. Like, what's it about? Ooh, she works at a magazine. Ugh.
I think I watched the first couple, 2 or 3 episodes with my niece song, and I enjoyed it, and I always thought, I need to go back and watch that.
Yeah, it's my kind of in the night, because I try and at least have like an episode of a sitcom or something before I go to bed, because I'll study and do stuff until the early morning hours, and I'm like, okay, I need something to shut off the brain.
For me, that show is Golden Girls.
Oh, yeah. I actually have Married with Children on Hulu that I use for that, and Malcolm in the Middle. But yeah, so I started watching Ugly Betty, and at first it's almost unbearable, like how mean, how bullying certain people are. But it really starts to come around and humanize everybody and all of that if you get through that first episode, and you're like, okay, I see now. And she's so endearing. America Ferrera, she's so sweet and endearing, but she's not a complete, rug. Like she doesn't completely let people walk over her. She's not a constant victim, which would be frustrating and I wouldn't find entertaining. Right. And she's intelligent and she's savvy. So yeah, if those things did not exist, I wouldn't be able to watch the show. And Vanessa Williams is she's so lovely, villainous,
I pretty much like her in everything.
Yeah.
She's a good villainess. I loved her I thought she really injected a breath of fresh air back into Desperate Housewives back when that was on. Did you watch that?
I did, and I don't remember much about it, which...
It's okay. It's been a while.
Yeah.
As Thing 2 would say, it's been a hot minute.
It has. Yeah. So I don't even remember what fresh air she injected. But like the big thing I'd seen her in was the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Eraser. Because she's the victim. Yeah.
Wow. Good memory. But
I watched action movies a lot.
Yes.
They're my good shut down the brain things.
So have you watched any movies?
Get this.
No.
I went to a movie theater twice this week.
Wow. How was it?
It was good. I will say that. So we went to Tinseltown first, which is a Cinemark, and they were not observing jack shit. Right. Although I think that it auto put seats between people on when you chose your seats. But when I went to Cinemark on Carefree for the second movie, they were much better observing it. So if there's anybody local who's thinking about going back to a theater, I would recommend Cinemark Carefree. But I'll also tell you that they will fill up faster, so you can't go in late.
I want to go to the new one at
the Roadhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So I want to go see The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard when it comes out there. I mean, after it's been out for a couple of weeks and isn't so busy, though.
Right. Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
So what did you see at these theaters?
All right. So the first one I saw was A Quiet Place 2. I met my sister there and took Boy Child. And that was good. We were so confused because it starts and there's a actor, like a character that you don't expect it and you're like, I
know who you're talking about.
Yeah. But they do a bit of a prequel. So you see when everything busted out, when everything went wrong. In brief, you just see it's calamity, like sudden when it happened. And then you go forward then to where they kind of left off.
Okay.
So just their creative ways of dealing with everything. Cillian Murphy. I don't know if that's the right way to say his name. I think he's an Irish actor. Anyway, he's in it. And so here's a little thing as a writer that was fun is they use a sign. It's basically Chekhov's gun. I've never seen a sign, a specific ASL for something. Right. I saw it and then I was like, that's going to be used again because they made a point of.
What was it the sign for?
Dive. So one of the characters asks the girl, how do you say dive? And I was like, that's going to come back. And it did. It's so great.
I like it when it comes around. Yeah.
Krasinski's clever.
So how do you compare it to the first one? Was it as good or was it a suitable, acceptable sequel?
I think there was more action in it, the second one, than in the first one, because they're actively having to move on. Mm-hmm. And so there was more action. There wasn't quite as much of the tension. I liked Quiet Place 1 for the drawn out tension where everybody in the theater was afraid to make noise. People were not as afraid to make noise. In the second one, we'll say, although you did hear, like, right as it's finally starting, everybody's, like, opening their packages and stuff just in case. You know, like, open all the candy and do all this. But anyway, I liked it.
Okay.
I think that there's clever elements in it, and I just enjoy it for being something new. And then the second movie we saw, I took Girl Child, and we went to see Cruella with Emma Stone. So,
how was that?
It was cute. It starts out a little bit slow, but then once she goes full Cruella, it's like, yes! It's so satisfying. So, yeah, I really liked it after that point. And again, it's a clever twist. It's here's the background. Here's why this person became the villain they did. Mm-hmm. And of course, they changed some of the details. And Horace and Jasper are in it. And they're not just these little henchmen like they are in the cartoon. And I will say at the end, stay through the credits, watch at the end. There's a cute little scene that wraps it back around to 101 Dalmatians.
Okay.
So I liked it. I would recommend it. I don't know if I'd necessarily, it's not one that you should run out and see in the theater if you don't want to go to the theater. And then I learned it was on Disney Plus, and we could have watched it there. You can watch it on Disney Plus.
Shit, I'm going to put right there on Disney Plus.
So anyway, for people who want to, it's cute to watch. Yeah.
I have Disney Plus or someone's access code.
There's just this really satisfying series of scenes that are just so much fun in it.
Oh, good. Yeah. I will check that out.
So, what have you watched?
I had an outing. I had a social outing. Right? Saturday, I got up early and went to the farmer's market. I know that's not your jam, but for me, that was like the best thing, because last year it was so much smaller and everybody was still kind of afraid to be anywhere near other people. I mean, justifiably. And it was shorter and it was smaller, and it didn't open until like the middle of July. So I was just like dancing around the farmer's market, waving my basket around,
throwing things in.
Yes. So I got good stuff. I got cherries and apricots from Colorado. I got cucumbers. I got some squash. I got a loaf of bread. It was just, I just walked around inhaling and sniffing all the smells and smiling at all the vendors. Because, I mean, there's one vendor I've been going to. I've seen him at farmers markets for 30 years.
The chicken man? The egg man?
No, his name is Adam. He's got a fruit stand or a produce stand. I mean, he recognizes thing one and thing two. Because they used to go with me all the time, and he would always let them pick out their very own cucumber.
Aw.
So.
Cute.
But yeah, so that I was just like, the sun is up and the air is fresh, and it was just it was like a whole feminine hygiene commercial.
Wow. With musical numbers and everything.
Yeah.
All while avoiding saying anything about feminine hygiene because people don't want to hear it.
This is true.
It was the week of outings because my husband and I went out for date night to Oscar Blues last night, which is a brewery. The original's in Lyons, right? That's the original. Well, they open one up here in the Springs, and usually they have.
Wait, did you go to Oscar Blues or Oscar? Yes, you did. Sorry, I was thinking of someplace else when we were talking about it earlier.
Oh, yeah. So usually they have like barbecue, and they have some, like they had a lot of really awesome food, but they are still in COVID menu because they can't find enough cooks. So I had like chicken fingers because there was nothing else I wanted.
I went there for lunch a while ago and it was good, but I don't remember what I had.
I've had really good stuff there before. Yeah. So I was really disappointed because normally they have cornbread and it's so good. And then they have these, what are the straws? They have onion straws, but they also have...
Oh, they're called Texas toothpicks because it's onions and jalapeno slivers.
Yes. Fried. And I wanted that. No, they didn't have that. I know. So, but they did have a beer that I've been looking for forever, which is Station 26. It's orange cream. And it's so orangey. I love me a citrus beer. I'm not a big beer person, but when I have it, I want it to have citrus.
That is true. You are not a big beer person.
I'm not. So, yeah, it was nice. We sat outside still. I mean, that's we live for doing that anyway, pandemic or not, we prefer to sit outside in the winter or summer.
Were you out front or out back?
Front.
Because they have a huge patio out back.
Do they really?
Yes.
God damn it.
Because I realized that when I went for lunch, when we went in, I was like, because it was kind of crowded like on one side and then like the whole back room was empty. And there was us and one other table and it was a little late for lunch. But I was like, oh, look, the patio's open.
Yeah.
So.
I didn't even know there was back patio. I just saw those 2 tables out front and was like, let's stop here. Because we were looking for somewhere and we kept running into places that wouldn't let us sit outside or that were too full or whatever. And so we just kept driving around until we found a place we could sit outside.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
So, have you read anything good?
I read, and I'll be doing this in one of the episodes. I read Anne Rule's Lust Killer. Anne Rule's the queen of true crime novels because she has so many ends and she always had good information. And she does a pretty even-handed, reporting as these things go. But anyway, it's about a guy named Jerry Brudos. And since I'll probably be doing him in a future episode, I'm not going to give that much. But he was a serial killer. So, yeah.
He's one I have not heard of.
Her books are always excellent. I haven't read one so far that I was like, not worth it.
I've been into mysteries. I go in spells because I really read everything. There's very little I don't read, genre wise. I read nonfiction, mystery, the occasional romance. Yeah. If Jenny Martz comes out with something, I'm going to read it. Yeah. Cindy Madsen, I know some of these people. I know they know how to write. So the one that I read is called Sell Low, Sweet Harriet. By Sherry Harris. It's cute. It's part of a series. And the main character has a business basically running estate sales for people. She calls them garage sales, but after reading through what she does, it's really what we would consider an estate sale. Okay. So you go in and, the family gets out everything they want and then you sell everything in the house and you have to go through and price everything and value everything. And it was a lot about what goes into that. We've done that, just us doing it.
It was fascinating.
Plus, it was a nice little mystery. I'm trying to remember. I can't even remember who died, but it was engaging and it kept my interest. And sometimes the series ones don't for whatever reason. Like they're either the main character is just all quirk and no depth, or they're so deadly, very serious. And there's nothing fun at all. This was a nice blend. It felt like a real person. Okay. And the other one I read, which was not part of a series, was Coffin Road by Peter May. And it's set on a Scottish island. I'm back in Scotland now. Scottish mysteries. Can't help myself. And Coffin Road is the road that the people on the island, the cemetery is on the other side of the island. So they used to have to carry the coffins up and over this road to get to the other side. But sometimes they just didn't feel like going all the way. So they would just stop and build the mound of rocks over it, bury them and build the little cairn. And all right. The book opens with this guy is washed up on the shore of the island, and he's half drowned and he's all beat up and he has no clue who he is. So interestingly, he decides to fake it. He doesn't know why. He's just got this feeling that there's something wrong. Yeah. And he knows things like he knows how to drive a car, but he can't remember who he is.
Right. Which I think that's normal.
Right. So there's this really very funny scene where 2 neighbors come over, and it's a small island. It's not a ton of people. And so his 2 neighbors come over, this married couple, and he's chatting with them and he's trying to not let on that he doesn't know what they're talking about. And they ask him how his book is doing. So he's like, okay, I'm here writing a book. And then he goes looking for the book and he can't find anything. And there's nothing on his computer. Like there is nothing on his computer. And he's like, did I wipe this out? Did someone else wipe it out? And then he wakes up in the night and he's got this horrible feeling that someone's in the cottage with him. And it turns out it's the woman from the married couple and she's climbing into bed with him. And he's like, well, alrighty.
Okay. I mean, I'm not going to kick you out.
Because he was like, well, apparently this is not the first time this has happened. So it was a very intriguing mystery within itself, this guy trying to figure out what happened, but the larger issue that they were dealing with, and I don't want to say too much. I don't want to there's one word I could say and it would ruin the book, but let's just say it's a very small mystery with this man, but it has global ramifications. It really does have a global thriller element that is not readily apparent until you get quite a ways into the book. It's really good.
Cool. Yeah.
So
you've got your little island rural life, and then, but there's more.
But wait, there's a Ginsu knife somewhere.
Yay! Or Matthew Willard. Either way. From Script. But wait, there's more.
So are we ready to leap in?
Yeah, I mean,
all right.
Do this thing. You go first. You want to rattle that paper a little more for me to edit it? I'm leaving it.
I was hoping you would. So I called this one Truth is Stranger Than Fiction, but it turns out responsible reporting is what the fucking fiction is. I was so disgusted with all the really well-known news organizations that published trash for this story.
Yeah, I told you a little bit about last episodes. Not only was there irresponsible publishing in that they called Hart, who they were seeking, convicted child molester, which he was not, and he was a dad, actually. But the number of things that leaked to the press that I didn't discuss in the episode. At one point, they thought it was a woman they put out that it was a woman who had done it. And it came down to, I was like, why? Like, what did they put out there? They made up. And they were like, well, they said the girls had been sexually molested, but not raped. And so they decided it was a woman. Anyway, it was just like, calm down and wait till you get actual news before you publish it. Get information, then it's so...
Yes. So I'm going to give you this both ways. I'm going to give you the way it was kind of presented in the popular press, but then I'm going to break it down in how it wasn't. So my sources were, guess, Wikipedia. What? Shocker. Also, this one was on Murderpedia. You always get some interesting, because you get everything there.
Yeah, because they pull over like random articles that you wouldn't have found any other way.
And there was also this link to Springer.com. No, not Jerry Springer. It's this aggregation of scholarly articles. And so I was able to read the abstract and part in this article that they did. I don't even know why. I'm like, how does this fit into scientific research? But it was from the point of view of the law. They were looking at the law behind the case. Okay. So we're going to go to Poland. Polish businessman Dariusz Januszewski, who is the owner of a small advertising agency, went missing in November of 2000 after leaving his office to meet with a potential client. The client had called him and asked him, please meet me at such and such a spot. I don't want anybody to hear my ideas. I want it to be very private, just the two of us, and I think you can really help me. So he goes off to meet the client. He's never heard from again. 4 weeks later, his body was found in the river Oder. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. It's in southwest Poland. It's not far from where he disappeared. He was mostly naked and had been starved and tortured before his death. His hands were bound behind his back and a noose had been placed around his neck. Mm-hmm. So the police had no leads into what happened. And the case was... I don't know if it was actually closed or if it was just shelved and not actively pursued. About 6 months later. They had no leads, so they shelved it. And at some point, I'm going to say again, remember that this is the Polish legal system, not the U.S. legal system, so there are going to be differences. They didn't do everything exactly the same. So in 2003, Krystian Bala, a photographer and writer, published his first novel, which is called Amok. It is very hard to find a synopsis of this novel in English. And I do not read Polish.
That's sad.
Yes, it is. So, from what I was able to piece together, the narrator is a bored intellectual / philosopher who drinks a lot and has a lot of sex. Oh, yeah. So, one of the plot strands is that the narrator murders one of his lovers and gets away with it. So one description, which came from the article, Katarzyna Straczynska's article, and again, apologies if I've mispronounced that. Here's how she described it. A postmodernist novel which has a non-linear plot and can be read in any order. Besides this, the book contains a plethora of word games, metaphors, and rhetorical devices which often make it difficult to understand. So already I'm thinking, no, this is not a book I ever need to read. The whole non-linear plot that can be read in any order, I'm like, that
would kill my soul a little.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do not believe that I would enjoy reading this. So a lot of these articles are talking about how this novel is a bestseller in Poland, and this guy is this well-renowned thriller author. But I could not substantiate that at first. Nor would anybody ever be able to substantiate that, because it just flat out isn't true. I do believe it did become widely read after what follows. I later found out, it took me forever to get to this, because all the news stories were inflated. This best-selling author wrote this book about a murder he committed and got away with. But the book was self-published and only a couple of thousand copies were sold, at least before this whole thing came out. So in early 2003, this is after the book has come out, but just. In early 2003, a police investigator named Jacek, and again, apologies, Wróblewski, was reviewing the unsolved case of Darius. So he noticed, when going back through the notes, and this is not uncommon here either, there are people who specialize in cold cases, and you go through and you read through the notes and see if you see anything with fresh eyes, or is there any detail that stands out, or is there anything missing? So what he noticed was that the victim's cell phone was never found. So that kicked off an entirely new phase of the investigation. The phone was still in use and had been sold several times on internet auction sites. But they tracked the initial sale on a Polish auction site back to November of 2000, just 4 days after Darius went missing. And the phone was sold by a user named Chris B7, who turned out to be Krystian Bala. So they had no reason, at this point in time, they had no other reason to connect Krystian to this murder. So the big play up is that they had a tip line open, and that after this book was published, people were phoning in anonymous tips. You need to read the book. The whole thing is spelled out there. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they actually did receive a tip, or if if this Wróblewski said, this guy just published a novel, I will take a look at it. He probably tore his hair out while he did it, but
it's a great way to make your book sell.
Yeah. So the details of the fictional murder were somewhat similar to the murder of Darius, including details that the police had never released to the public. That was the crux right there, including those details. Either way, hold on, I have to scan ahead and see if I do include that next. So I'm going to say it now. So the similarities, the rope that was used for the murder, it was some specific kind of rope, the tying the hands behind the back and the noose around the neck, and they were connected. The noose and the hands were connected so that if you moved, if the victim moved, you tighten it.
Yeah.
Selling items related to the crime on the internet auctions featured in the book, event from Bala's life appearing in the novel as if they had happened to the narrator's life, and the motive of jealousy. So I read that and I was like, holy shit. Every author everywhere needs to now watch their ass, because we all write about things that happened in our life. We change them and we exaggerate one part of them, but I'm like, can you imagine if somebody came back to you and said, well, we think you committed this crime because you wrote about this in your book and it happened to you in real life. That's just not. I was like, that's got to give every author the shivers. So despite all of these headlines, and I written just to sell papers. Fun fact, this is for thing 2. Fun fact, the novel was not allowed to be entered into evidence.
That seems like a victory.
Yeah, the court ruled that despite what a lot of these hyped up news articles reported, It was not an exact match, and there is no demonstrable connection between a fictional murder and a real-life murder. So the courts ruled...
Props.
Yes, they did a good thing. So it turns out that Darius had spent at least one night in a hotel with Bala's ex or estranged wife. It wasn't clear. Some called her name was Stasia. Some referred to her as ex-wife. Some said estranged. Despite the fact that he cheated on his wife many times, it was apparently common knowledge. So anyway, despite the fact that Bala was a habitual cheater on his wife, he refused to let her go, dragged his feet, didn't want the divorce to go through. He wanted to control her. Mm-hmm. So at a New Year's Eve party in 2000, so to me, this is kind of the crux of the argument, not the whole book. In New Year's Eve in 2000, so this guy went missing in November. He was found in December. This is the end of December. Witnesses reported that Bala had an angry outburst after seeing Stasia, his estranged wife, talking to another man. He reportedly threatened the man, shouting that he would get rid of him and that he had already done it once with a rope. Mm. I'm like, really? That's not your lead? So there was more solid evidence. So there was a phone card that was used to call Darius on the day of his disappearance, the mysterious clients. The same phone card just happened, coincidentally, to call Bala's office, his parents, and his girlfriend.
Jeez. That's a coincidence.
That's total coincidence.
Yeah.
So the police couldn't, when all this came to light, when they discovered who had first sold the phone, a mere 4 days after the death, or after the disappearance, police couldn't immediately question Bala because he was traveling internationally. After he returned and was questioned, he accused the police of kidnapping him and accused them of brutality in their questioning, which in turn launched an internal investigation into the police department. It was eventually decided that there was absolutely no evidence at all to support his accusations. They didn't do all these things to him. For the most part, he claimed that he didn't know and had never heard of Darius Januszewski. So that's what he keeps saying over and over and over again. But at one point in one of the interrogations, he confessed to killing the man. He then claimed he didn't feel well and had or faked a fainting spell. Shades of, the...
Oh, woe is me.
Yes, the melodrama.
Hand to the forehead.
Yes. A doctor was brought in to examine him. Found absolutely nothing wrong with him. He didn't have...
Would you like a fainting couch, sir?
Yeah. Would you like some, what are those little capsules?
Smelling salts.
Smelling salts. So after that, he refused to sign the confession and went back to claiming ignorance, despite the police finding information about Darius and his company on Bala's computer. I guess it just magically appeared.
Oh.
So there are some differences. I'm not going to go into the entirety of how the trial proceeded and how their justice system works, because that's not the point. That is not why we are here. Nope. So it was determined. So this just kind of cracked me up. There were 14 pieces of circumstantial evidence presented, and they said that 10 of them built a logical sequence that proved Bala guilty and refuted his claims of innocence. He was found guilty of planning and leading the murder with unknown accomplices.
Okay.
I like that. I was like, you could be accused of leading the murder.
Right, when you don't even know who the...
Yeah, so they still don't know who the accomplices were.
That's loyalty.
Yeah. So in September of 2007, Bala was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The case was appealed, and in 2009, they said, nope, you're still guilty. You still have to serve 25 years. Put him back in prison. There's no more appeals. There was they said
that's it.
Yep, they said there are no grounds for you to appeal this again, unless something new,
In the U.S., you're like, appeal.
He still claims he's innocent, and that he was convicted because the police fixated on his book, which was completely a work of fiction. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, the police didn't fixate on it.
The press did.
The press did. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, to me, a murder is always horrible. One person murdering another for whatever reason is always awful. But to me, what was extremely disappointing, because at first I was like, oh, he committed this murder and then he wrote about it and he got away with it for years, which is because I read that first batch of articles. But it's so disappointing, the level of sensationalism from so-called journalists around the world. A lot of them in the U.S., but not entirely. It happened in Poland.
It's just journalism, period. Is there honest journalism anywhere?
I want to believe that there is, but to completely ignore facts and promote the sensational story. I mean, I expect that when I pick up the National Enquirer. Mm-hmm. I don't expect that when I pick up a reputable paper.
I think those lines have blurred.
It's become...
Because papers don't sell as much and because they're struggling to stay relevant. Yeah. But that wasn't then, so.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and I was kind of like, ooh, because when I was getting ready to leave the house, my husband was like, ooh, what you can talk about this time? And I was like, I got one that happened in the 2000s. Because I'm always...
Nice, yeah. The turn of the century.
Yeah, axe murderers, my jam. But I was... this one was there wasn't an axe used, but I wonder if anybody does use an axe anymore. God, isn't it horrible that I'm even wondering?
Hold my beer. Wait. Now I can't do it because I admitted to it ahead of time. Let me write a story about it and then do it and see how that works out.
Well, no, you got to do it and then write the story about it so you include all the details.
That's right. That the police know about, but they never released.
Right.
There's a thing also that's always bothered me about the media. People are information hungry, right? They want to know more. That's why we have podcasts like this. That's why some of us research stuff. So I'm putting myself in there. But the ones who get secret information from somebody who leaks something, do they not understand how much they hurt an investigation or a case when they do stuff like that? Because then the perpetrator can cover it up, or you've just leaked information that they were keeping back so that they could tell is this person, because there's so many cranks who admit to crimes they didn't do.
Yes, that always astounds me.
That one fascinates me. I mean, there's even a guy now called the Confession Killer, and they're doubting everything that he's admitted to, but he would be the most successful crank confessor ever. But
yes.
But they leak that stuff, and they're so gleeful about having gotten this information before everybody else or whatever. And it's like, but you just made it so that maybe somebody can't get convicted, or maybe somebody can't get caught. And I'm so glad you think you're fucking clever for doing that.
I don't understand impeding an investigation.
I don't either.
For ratings.
Or that's like when there's supposed to be a secret base and the press covers it, I mean, NORAD was technically...
Yeah.
supposed to be secret, and everybody knows about NORAD. They made a whole movie about it, but it's just crazy to me that we feel this need to do that and break things and taking a drink
and the salacious details. It's not enough to say, it's like you have to dig up absolutely the worst details about the victim, whether they're related to the crime or not.
Right. Well, that's why I still have such respect for the Canada having the "you may not bring a woman's history into a rape case," because it is not at all relevant, because it's not.
It absolutely isn't.
It's not. So America needs to get there. But yeah, let's air everything about this person who was shot by this person, so that we can show you that they weren't an angel after all, so somehow it matters less.
Yeah, I still remember where I grew up, a man, and he was, I don't remember if he was inebriated in some fashion. Mm-hmm. And he stepped out into the street to cross the street, and an off-duty police officer hit him. And they tested his blood while he was unconscious. And said, well, he was jaywalking, and B, he was under the influence. And I can't remember if he's drunk or if he's smoking a bunch of pot. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how drunk he was. Okay, he was jaywalking, but you don't get to take his blood for a criminal investigation when you hit him. He didn't throw himself. He didn't leap in front of, I think it was a motorcycle. He didn't leap in front of it. It was an accident, but they were going to such extreme to put the blame on him.
Right. Well, I can understand that. Okay. So was he inebriated and therefore did he possibly step out in front of it versus being steered toward? But other than that.
Yeah.
It's okay. So we know that he could have been a contributor.
Yeah.
Right. But we also know he probably didn't throw himself in front of the bike. But either way, it's an accident.
Yes. And it really bothered me that they were trying to blame him.
Right.
Yes. I'm sure he went out and said, I'm going to have a few beers and throw myself into traffic.
I listened to a podcast and it's Small Town Dicks and they go around and talk to, they're not known stories.
Sorry.
I know every time they say
10 years old.
I'm like, really? Why did you do this? But they go to small towns and they talk to cops and they just tell their stories. So it's not ones that you're going to have seen a billion times or heard of. But anyway, it was this terrible case. And this woman, there was a man and his adult son walking across the street and they did jaywalk, in fact, but they didn't expect a car to come screaming around the corner. And not only did she hit them, she clipped the son's ankle because he was ahead, but he fell away. They hit the man, and the man went up onto the roof of the car, severely injured already from the hit, and that bitch kept driving.
Oh.
And she started trying to shake him off.
Oh, my God.
And she did ultimately, and he did die. They found him in a gutter after he finally was thrown off like he was on a bull. And they were able to track down the person who did it and found them, and people lied and tried to give her an alibi. But anyway, it turned out she was drunk off her happy ass. And I don't remember if the man and his son were or not. I don't believe they were. I think they were heading to dinner or something. But it was just they're questioning her, and she never asked if he was okay. She didn't even know he died. She never asked, how is that man I hit? And that right there was sociopathy. She did not give a shit about this man. All she wanted was him off the car. And then she said, well, I didn't know I'd hit a man. But the thing is, when the dude was up there, a part of him was over the windshield on the passenger side. There was no way not to know she'd hit a man. She knew she'd hit a man, and she continued forward. But yeah, it's just horrible. But she was drunk. And she did it, she admitted it. And did you have any drinks? Yeah, I just had like 2 beers. And then they're talking to her. So they had the interview with her on there. And then she's like, well, and then I had like 1 shot. And they're like, a shot of what? And it was like vodka or something. And she goes, oh, and I had sex on the beach. So anyway, there was actually video footage of the place she'd been drinking. And she had gotten so drunk that she swiped a bunch of shit off a table, got physically removed from the place where she was drinking. That's how drunk she is. She fell over something. She was sloppy drunk. And she got in the car. Not only that, she drove home the person she was with, dropped them off, got her niece into the car with her, and went back out. I mean, there was something so wrong with this person.
Yeah.
But it just killed me, like, to just do that, to completely disregard this human on your roof and keep going and then try and cover up the crime. I know people flee, but good Lord. He's still on your car. That's not a flee situation. No, you're still on your car and you're still killing him.
You're kidnapping now.
Yeah. So,
I would like to see her charged with kidnapping.
I think that they did. I mean, when they can pull something like that, they do. If you remove a person bodily from one person to another, it's kidnapping. Or one place to another, It's kidnapping.
He certainly didn't leap up there of his own volition.
No.
So what you got good this week?
All right. So I am covering the murder of Johnny Stompanato.
Oh, what a name. Stompanato.
His brother's name was Carmine. And just, there is going to be a mafia connection. But so I was like, Carmine? Really?
Carmine Stompanato.
That's right. So my sources were Wikipedia, People Magazine, MSN, LA Times, and History 101.
Is this the first time we've used People as a...
No, I think I've used it before.
Okay.
I have to say that their online articles are for shite, which is funny because they usually have some good...
Yeah.
There's usually a hard-hitting story, one included in each issue. But anyway, that maybe it was just this article. It was quite sensationalist, too. But there's a reason why this was even extra sensationalized above extra things.
Oh, yes.
All right, so I'm going to give a little background on a certain someone who's involved in this. Born February 8th, 1921, Julia Jean Turner was the daughter of a silver miner and a mine inspector's daughter. Her family moved to San Francisco when she was 6, but her father was murdered soon after. He had gone to play craps, and he was found on the street, bludgeoned to death. He'd been walking home, and he had put his craps winnings in his sock. So when they found his body, that shoe and sock were missing. This is somebody who saw him leave with the money. Anyway, they never solved it. Oh. Her mother struggled to support them, and Judy Turner, as people were asked to call her at the time, went through many temporary homes, at least one of which was abusive. Her mother would put her with friends, with family, with acquaintances, and one was super religious and were terrible to her, and one was abusive. And so, yeah. When she was a junior at Hollywood High School, she skipped typing class to go to the Top Hat malt shop, where she ordered a Coca-Cola. The publisher of the Hollywood Reporter happened to be there, and taken by her, he thought that both her physicality and her looks were stunning. He asked if she'd like to get into the movies, and she said, "I have to ask my mom." So she did.
Good girl.
That's right, and she was given permission. So he introduced her to Zeppo Marx.
Oh, wow.
Yes, who then introduced her to Mervyn LeRoy, who was a director. She was hired on to do her first job with Warner Brothers with a $50 a week contract, which must have been, that sounds like a goodly amount there.
Yeah,
back in the 30s?
Yeah.
Her first role, though small, caught people's attention, and they named her the Sweater Girl, due to the fact that she was wearing a very fitted sweater in the movie. She absolutely hated it. But it stuck. I was looking, the articles I was pulling up, they would write an article about her, like in the 2000s, and in the freaking headline it was the Sweater Girl. It didn't even say her name. Like, how dehumanizing.
Yeah.
But anyway, when Leroy moved to MGM, he took her with him, and she became a star. And the only reason they let her out of her contract to go with him at Warner was because they didn't think she was going anywhere. And so they were like, okay, sure, take her with you. We don't care. And of course, he made her something. Leroy had suggested the name Lana to replace her birth name, and so she ultimately changed her name legally to Lana Turner. She would come to be known as a sex symbol and a femme fatale, and her rocky personal life was frequently splashed across the tabloids because, unlike a lot of people, Marilyn Monroe, when you read about her, she struggled so hard to live up to what the studio wanted of her. And at this time, the studios owned these people.
Oh, yeah, they did.
They made them who they were. They renamed them. They bleached their hair. If you were Marilyn Monroe, you were made into the actor, and it was a part you were playing.
They would try to change your sexual orientation.
Yep. So Lana Turner kind of pushed back against that. She was very well known. She actually was nicknamed the nightclub queen because she'd go out and party, and she dated, and she liked men, and she was like, I'm not ashamed of that. But she did end up, she would marry them for propriety's sake. And so she had a lot of marriages. Jumping ahead to about 16 years into her acting career, we moved to the spring of 1957, when Lana Turner was filming The Lady Takes a Flyer. She started getting flowers and gifts delivered to her, and they were signed by a John Steele. He would call, and he'd talk to her on the telephone, too. And though she had no idea how he'd acquired her phone number, she was like, I don't know how he got this number. The gifts from John Steele became bigger and more lavish, and he told her he was in his 40s and he owned a gift shop. She was fast approaching her 40s and struggling to get roles at times because, and he made her feel young.
Okay, I see the appeal.
Yeah. Eventually, she discovered Steele was actually Johnny Stompanato, an ex-Marine, World War II veteran, and gangster. He was associated with Mickey Cohen. He'd been going under the fake name so his mafia affiliations wouldn't scare her away. They did at first once she found out who he was, but she was too intrigued by him. She loved his forthrightness. She loved how he was pursuing her. And so she says, all right, let's go out on a date. And they do. And they go on many more dates, and they become an item. Now, she worried a lot about her reputation with this mafioso. She still didn't know he was younger than her.
Oh.
The relationship was full of violence pretty much from the beginning. There were constant arguments. He physically abused her. They would always reconcile. They'd have this huge extreme fight. Neighbors would hear it, and they would reconcile. She'd go back to him over and over and over again. And her fear that he was going to mess up her reputation meant she didn't take him to like big Hollywood things. And he wanted her to get him into this. He wanted to ride her coattails. And he at one point wanted to be her producer. Like, let me be your producer. Like, start introducing me as that. And so he got really angry, and he was already a jealous, controlling man. So her refusing to have him on her arm and give him that name that he wanted was problematic. Months after the relationship began, Stompanato stormed onto the set of Another Time, Another Place, which was filming in London. They were renting a house together while she filmed. She'd actually tried to get him not to come because she needed a break from him, and then she gave in because he kept calling her and calling her and calling her, and she felt bad, so she said, come out and stay with me. But she did tell him, but you can't visit me on the set. You may not come to the set. So, of course, he didn't want to hear that.
Of course.
As often happens in movies like this, there were rumors that she was having an affair with her co-star, Sean Connery.
Oh, okay. This is where Sean Connery comes into it.
And so Stompanato, of course, believed these rumors.
He was quite the hottie back then.
God, yes.
I mean, he's always been attractive, but he was a Mr.
It was in his yeah.
He was a Mr. Universe.
Oh, I don't remember.
He was a bodybuilder.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, so you can see how Stompanato would feel threatened, right? He's like, oh, shit, Sean Connery of all men, right? He's got a lot to come up against. So he actually started choking her and put a pillow over her face. And luckily she had guards that were staying there, like from the production company, and they were able to intervene.
Holy shit.
Yeah. But then so this was the story was different everywhere I looked. So I chose one version. Her makeup artist went with her to Scotland Yard after this raging fight, right? And she was like, can you just deport him? Can you send him away? That this happened and I'm afraid and everything. And so they were actually like kind of starting the process from the sound of it. He finds out. He hears that she's done this. I don't know how. And he came to the set with a gun, which he used to threaten both Lana Turner and her co-star. Here's the thing. I know that bad shit has come out about Sean Connery. I will always love him because I grew up on him. I get it. He was a womanizer. He was, I think, sexist. He talked about smacking a woman at one point.
Yes.
But when I first heard this, like as a teenager, I was like, oh, fuck yeah, that's hot. Because I was a teenager. Sean Connery reaches over. He grabs the gun. He twists the dude's wrist and he makes him drop the gun, like totally unfazed. Wow. Gets a gun away from a gangster. Gangster runs off the set. And I was like, all right, that's manly.
That's kind of hot.
It is. I know. It's terrible. But
yep, we're terrible sexist pigs.
Yep. I'm going to take it. I'm going to take that one right there. Anyway, he runs from set. And Turner was able to get 2 detectives from Scotland Yard to then accompany her to the rental house where he went when he ran away. Who knows what he would have done to her had she come home alone at that point. So, and they accompany him. They say, all right, pack up your shit. And they accompany him to the airport and they make sure he gets on a plane going back to America. Now, some of the articles said he was officially deported. It sounds like they kind of, maybe it wasn't official, but they were like, but you're going anyway.
Please go and don't come back.
So she's able to finish filming there. Everything's great. Yay. So this occurred in September 1957. So everybody knows where we are date-wise. And by January 1958, they'd reconciled.
Of course.
She did try to go to Acapulco on her own for a vacation to have a break. He invited himself along and just came. So during their 2-month stay in Mexico, because everybody gets to take 2-month vacations.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Right? I like a week is pushy and I'm like, oh, let's go for 3 days. That's what we can afford. He started pulling guns on her during their fights. He threatened to commit suicide. He was really pushing her at this point. I want a role in show business. You need to make this official. Upon their return, Turner attended the Academy Awards with her daughter instead of Stompanato. So she's still...
Who'd she have the daughter with? Or do we know?
It was her second husband, I believe. And he will come into this. He will come into play. And so he gets pissed off. And so they're fighting about that. He attacks her again. At some point, it came out then that he was actually several years younger than her, that he'd been lying this whole time. He'd left a wife and a little boy to move out to Hollywood to woo actresses. He'd actually contacted a bunch of other actresses. Zsa Zsa Gabor was in the list. There were some I didn't recognize. So, 8 days later, on April 4th, after a day of shopping, they went shopping together at some point during the day. He showed up at Turner's new place. And she had just moved in there a week before. She was renting like a mansion, you know, as they do.
As one does.
Yes. Turner went to her daughter's room and told her, I'm going to be breaking up with him tonight. So if you hear fighting, that's what it's about. Just stay in your room.
How old was daughter?
14.
Okay.
And they do. She tells him she wants to be done with him. And they started arguing. As expected, you know, it was going to happen whether she tried to break up with him or not, because the Academy Award's been a few days before and she hadn't taken him. So this time now he's threatening. There's death threats. He says he's going to kill her daughter. He's going to kill her mother. There's all this stuff. And he threatened to break her bones, slash her face with a razor, all these things. I actually have a quote here in a minute.
What a sweetheart.
He was great. Turner's daughter, Cheryl Crane, she was 14 years old. Like I said, she overheard what was going on. She goes into the master bedroom at one point and her mom says, get out. You don't need to be hearing this. Go back to your room. The master, it sounds like, was on the main floor. Cheryl's room was upstairs.
Okay.
So Cheryl leaves the room but she's really afraid that he's really going to hurt her mom this time, you know. And she said she didn't. Her mom shut the door behind her. She said she didn't remember doing this, but she picked up a butcher knife off of the counter. Mm-hmm. And she went back to the room and she's standing outside the door listening. And so a quote from Cheryl later, she quoted this on Phil Donahue. When a man works with his hands, this is what he said to the mom, Lana Turner. When a man works with his hands, I will cut off his hands. You work with your face, and I will destroy your face. And if I can't do it, I have friends who will, and your mother and your kid are next. Okay. On the stand, Lana Turner would later say that after she told him it was over, quote, he grabbed me by the arms and started shaking me and cursed me very badly and saying that if he said jump, I would jump. If he said hop, I would hop. And I would have to do anything and everything he told me or he'd cut my face or cripple me. So hearing his threats, Cheryl had that knife and she's standing there. And she's trying to figure out what to do. And then the door opens. And Lana Turner runs out behind, like past her daughter. And Stompanato steps out and he steps into this knife. Because when the door opened, Cheryl had lifted up the knife. And he walked right into it. And Cheryl Crane said, he looked at her and he just said, good God, Cheryl, what have you done? She had actually really liked him. She had... up to a certain point, and then he'd ruined it. Her mom had dated all these guys and brought them around. Her mom had married other men since her dad. One of those men had sexually abused her. Ugh. Johnny Stompanato bought her, what was it, an Arabian Red, a horse. Oh, wow. At one point early. She said she liked him because he didn't try to kiss up to her like they did. He spoke to her honestly. Okay. But then he started sexually molesting her. So, anyway... Turner actually just thought her daughter had punched him. She didn't see the knife. She just saw this impact, right? And then him kind of hunch over. So she thought her daughter had punched him. And then there was blood on his shirt. And he's dropping to the ground. And she's like, what the hell's going on? So Cheryl Crane dropped the knife onto a table. And she picked up the phone. She called her dad first. And then Turner, once she was off the phone, Turner called a doctor. And this doctor came to the house. It wasn't like an emergency number. Doctor came to the house, gave him an injection of adrenaline, and then put him on a respirator. And then when he couldn't produce a pulse, the doctor called emergency services. And emergency services notified the police. Okay. Yeah. So all of this, Stompanato was pronounced dead. The autopsy confirmed that he died from a single knife wound. The knife, though, it went through his liver, his portal vein, and his aorta. Because it was kind of, held up at this angle. She was just clenching it in her fist up. She wasn't like holding it up like Psycho ready to come down on him. It was just pointed up because she held it out in front of her. And it would vary. Like some of the things she said she stabbed it forward and some of them said he walked into it. I don't know. Again, The press on this, because we are dealing with an actress who was well known at the time, it was everywhere. Who knows? Unless I went through and read the court transcripts, which I believe are available online, I wouldn't hear what anybody said for sure. When Chief Anderson arrived, Lana Turner begged him, please let me say I did it. Can I? And a reporter who showed up and sneaked in actually confirmed to have overheard her saying that.
Wow.
Like, can I say I did it? I don't want my baby. Like, And the chief said, not unless you actually did it. And at that point, Cheryl had already confessed to her dad. She'd already said, I mean, she was in shock, I'm sure. Yeah. She's 14 years old and she just killed a guy.
Who sexually molested her.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't why she killed him. But...
Nope. And it didn't come out until much later. She didn't actually reveal that for a long time. But yeah, she had told her dad as soon as he got there, I stabbed him. So Turner and her ex-husband, Stephen Crane, and that's her dad's name, hired an attorney within 1 hour of the stabbing, trying to protect their daughter. I mean, they're scrambling. Cheryl Crane was surrendered at the Beverly Hills Police Department and questioned. They arrested her for the murder of Johnny Stompanato and placed her in juvenile hall. A juvenile pre-detention hearing occurred on April 7th, 1958, just 2 days after her official arrest in the early morning hours of April 5th. Turner had filed to have Cheryl released into the grandmother's care, so Lana's mom. But the judge thought that she'd be safe for remaining in juvenile custody until the official hearing. And, he might have been right. The entire thing was a media frenzy, of course.
Yeah.
They were outside the courthouse when Cheryl got there to be booked. They'd already heard about it. They knew what had happened before she was even at the police department. And they were crawling all over the house, obviously, because the one snuck in and overheard it. At some point, they got their hands on love letters that had been written between Lana Turner and Johnny Stompanato, and somebody gave that to the papers, and they published them. Cheryl's pre-detention hearing had been closed to the public, but future proceedings were not. There were over 100 journalists at the coroner's inquest alone, and that occurred on April 11th. The gangster Mickey Cohen, again a friend and an associate of Stompanato's, was called in as the first witness. He was the first one on the stand. And he was infamous he'd been on the stand before, and he would always I take the fifth so I don't incriminate myself. And so he refused to take any part in the proceedings, and he wouldn't talk about Stompanato. He wouldn't identify a photo of him to confirm that he knew him. He said, I do not in any way want to be wrapped up in this. You can't, so you can somehow accuse me of being involved in this crime. I plead the fifth. So he wouldn't say anything. But he didn't have that same problem with the press. One article I read said it appears Cohen was responsible for the break-in at Stompanato's apartment after he was dead, and that's probably when the love letters were taken and given anonymously to the press, because Cohen kept telling the press he felt there was more to the story. He felt that Lana Turner had done the killing. A lot of people thought Lana Turner had done the killing and planned it and all of this. And so he wanted that to come out, and so he probably was the one that leaked all of that. Another friend of Stompanato, Stephen Trousseau, stood up and yelled he wanted to testify. Cheryl Crane, he thought she had murdered Stompanato on purpose because she was in a jealous rage. She was jealous of her mom. She was in love with Stompanato, and she wanted to be in a relationship with him. I don't even know where he pulled this. The judge was like, sit down, shut the fuck up. He doesn't let this guy testify. Good. He's got nothing. Where's he even getting this from?
Just pulling shit.
I guess I could see Stompanato talking about, her daughter has a thing for me too. In the meanwhile, he's molesting her. Gross.
Yuck.
Okay. They did not force Cheryl to testify in the stand, so she did not have to get up there in front of the press and everybody and testify. They instead read her written statement that she had stabbed him when she heard him threatening her mother. Lana Turner struggled through her testimony, and many would later call it her greatest acting job ever. She was shaking. She pulled off the glove. She had Kleenex the whole time, and she was really struggling. When she got back, she collapsed at the table, but she thought her baby was going to prison for murder. And anyway, all in all, the case was fairly quick. 4 hours of testimony, 25 minutes of deliberation.
Wow.
It was found to be a justifiable homicide. Cheryl had to remain in juvenile hall until April 24th, when a juvenile court hearing allowed her to be released to her grandmother so she'd have proper parental supervision. She was technically the grandmother was a guardian, so she was still the state was also still a legal guardian of hers, so they had control and decision making, but the actual in-person guardianship was from her grandmother. She was ordered to attend counseling, and her parents were supposed to attend with her. But Cheryl later said they never talked about the murder for many, many years. Her dad never talked to her about it. Nobody talked to her. She killed a man, and nobody would talk to her about what happened. It was we don't talk about this.
Yep.
Yes. And, but I believe she did get to go to counseling, but they weren't there with her. The public came after Lana Turner, saying she'd lied on the stand, that she'd put on her best performance ever. They stated that she was a bad moral influence on her daughter. Her previously mentioned film Another Time, Another Place came out, and it flopped at the box office. Stephen Crane stated that he'd be pursuing full custody of his daughter. It appears actually, like I looked to see, I don't think he ever got it. I think he did pursue it, but she remained with her grandmother until she was 18. And that was her own request.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah. But having said that,
out of here.
Right. I don't want to be, I'm not involved in any of this. She did run away multiple times. She attempted suicide, eventually turned to pills and alcohol. She did have a problem with that for a while. I can't blame her.
No.
Her family actually tricked her into being institutionalized for 10 months. It was right before she was turning 18. And she had met a guy. So I'll say at this point, she had realized that she actually liked women, that she did not like men. Okay. So and again, I mean, we're looking at, this is the 50s. And so by the time she was almost 18, it would have been early 60s, 62 or whatever. And so that's not a thing you tell people.
No.
And she had a male friend who did know. And he said, why don't we get married? So I can get you away from this situation. You can do what you need to do. They'll think it's legitimate because you're marrying a man. So you don't have to deal with this.
He was her beard.
He was. And he was perfectly willing to do this for her. And in fact, they even set up a couple things. She was still living in her grandmother's house. And he came over and got into bed with her. And they set it up on purpose so they would walk in and see them in bed together. Okay? Because it would have been very bad to come out and say that she was gay. So it didn't matter. And they said they were going to go get married. And so Lana and the grandmother, there was a lot about, even though she was under the grandmother's guardianship, the Lana Turner was very controlling too over her daughter. And I mean, I can see that during this, right? But so what she said basically, she influenced her mom with certain decisions. She was very strict on her daughter. And so, she couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything, had to dress properly, all this stuff. So she talks them into, well, why don't we put you into this place and then you'll get out when you're 18, which was just a couple months later. And this will help you with some stuff. Let's go ahead. But they ultimately tricked her into being like, okay, because I'll get out in 2 months. Then she's in there. Well, and the thing is, she could have checked herself out at any time, but she didn't know it. Lana Turner got everybody to lie to her. Oh. Cheryl even called her mom's attorney who lied for the mother and said, nope, you can't check. You have to wait until your mom signs you out. So then she was there for 10 months before anybody told her. And she said it was awful there. I mean, there's no asylum that was good in the 60s.
No.
Okay.
But to have your own mother.
Yes. And everybody working with your mother against you. But she did finally find out, and she was able to get out. No, that's not even it. I believe her mom realized it wasn't helping her daughter, so she genuinely wanted her in there because she needed help. I mean, bearing in mind she was on drugs but it wasn't working. So she checked her out, I believe. And then that's when she found out she could have checked herself out at any time. I imagine because they were like, well, do you want to check out? Because you're 18 now and she can't check you out. And she was like, excuse. But I don't know. Anyway, she then plunged even further into the issues because she didn't get to run away with her friend. That was all shut down. And so she hit bottom, and she did ultimately ask her mom for help getting out from all of it. And her mom, she said, my mom genuinely wanted to help me. And she did. So I know I'm like, really? Because she seemed a little narcissistic.
Little?
And as much as I respect that she was herself and she dated and she did all this stuff.
Yes.
She was also not very involved in her daughter's life. And, she'd go away to film and her daughter would go to stay with the grandma or the dad or whatever. And she was just constantly bringing these men around her daughter right away,
Yeah.
And that's Never a good thing.
No.
And obviously things happened when that. So I think the guy's name was Lex Barker. I think he may be well known because he was mentioned a few times. He was the one who molested her. And I think he was her mom's 5th husband, I want to say. So anyway, Lana Turner's career did recover with her next film. It was actually more of a dramatic film. She started being taken seriously as a serious actress before people were like, she can't act. We just like to see her on screen. And she was able to move past things. But her age caught up to her, and then she couldn't make any more movies. So she got that serious actress punch in there, and she made some more movies, and they're like, you're at your upper 40s there. Bye-bye. And then she ended up moving to television. I didn't realize she was in Falcon's Landing or whatever that. It was like is that a soap opera? I remember hearing about it. I didn't watch it. I don't know when that was on.
No. Falcon Crest.
Yes.
Knots Landing.
Okay, so Falcon Crest.
Okay.
Because it was the Falcon one.
Okay.
So she was in that.
Huh.
Yeah. I don't know. I've heard of it a billion times. I don't know who was in it.
I was like, Falcon Crest. I don't think I ever watched it,
But you've heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, soapy.
Yeah, I think so. But an evening soap.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Stompanato's ex-wife, Sarah Ibrahim, filed a wrongful death suit against Lana Turner, Cheryl Crane, and Stephen Crane for $750,000 for her son. Which, I'm just like, so you're going to do that to this little girl after all that? Whatever. Her claim said that Lana Turner had been the one to stab Stompanato, and that Stephen Crane had arrived before he died, and they'd waited to summon medical assistance and to save him.
Right. Of course.
She had absolutely no evidence of this. But they did get somebody to look at the coroner's report and make a different decision.
Ugh.
And in their case, they had that he was lying on the floor when he was stabbed. Which really, even then, okay, so who wrestled him to the floor of the two tiny women? I think Lana Turner is 5'2" or 5'4". I remember from seeing on her Wikipedia page. So I'm sure she got down the big gangster guy. At one point, yeah. So they did settle out of court, actually, in May of 1962 for $20,000. They were like, here, take the fucking money, right? But not $750. That's a lot. And in that time, that was insanely a lot. 2 different people who worked with Lana Turner wrote memoirs in 1996, the year I got married. One, a hairdresser, claiming that she had confessed to him that she'd murdered Stompanato and let her daughter take the blame. The other, a stylist, said she'd bought a new knife the day of the murder at a hardware store. And the thing is, that was already out. Lana Turner and Stompanato had gone together to buy kitchenware because she'd just moved in a week before. So she had, in fact, bought the knife that day, but she didn't just buy a knife.
She bought other kitchen things.
Yes. Cheryl Crane has stated repeatedly that she killed him. It's so, to me, there's this irony in having to convince people that you are the one who did the killing. But admittedly, when I first heard about this story and forever, I always wondered, did she really kill him and let her daughter take the blame because she wouldn't have had to go to prison, right? Who knows? But the more I read it and researched it, it really seems like Cheryl Crane did it. Because especially when you have the police chief and a reporter who wasn't even supposed to be there, who both back up that she said, can I please take the blame for this? So that kind of convinced me right there more than anything else. She said her mother would never have allowed her daughter to take the rap for something that she'd done, and that her mother wasn't acting on the stand. She was fighting for her daughter, terrified of the possible outcome. So Cheryl Crane did write an autobiography entitled Detour, A Hollywood Story in 1988. In it, she said Stompanato had been sexually abusing her, and that's when that first came out. And that's when she also mentioned that one of the 7 husbands had done it.
Yes.
She grew up to marry model Joyce Leroy and be a real estate agent. They moved to Hawaii. But before that, her dad actually owned a restaurant and then a restaurant chain, I think. And she got a degree in hospitality, and she actually helped him with that. She started, working low at the restaurant and worked way up. And she actually worked with him for, I think, 15 years with his restaurants before doing the real estate thing. By the time Lana Turner died in 1995 of throat cancer, she'd been married 7 times. She was 74 years old. During her time with MGM, her films earned more than $50 million for them.
Wow.
And she was one of the highest paid actresses in the 40s.
I can't believe, I know the 90s weren't yesterday, but I can't believe she was alive that long. To connect that,
yeah.
It seems like, wow.
She made it a long time, and the reason she was a heavy drinker and a heavy smoker.
Oh.
But it took until, what I say, 74. I mean, that's pretty good as these things go. And she was in and out of the hospital. I think she got rid of it. She beat it with radiation and chemo, and then it came back. And then it was actually a shock when she died. It came back with a vengeance and was very fast that time. And it was like a week's notice, It was one of those where they were like, we thought she was fine, and she had just started back at radiation, and then she died. So, yeah. She was very colorful at the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that would be colorful even now, but...
One of the things I found, so her discovery is one of the more famous ones. It's talked about over and over. It was wrongly attributed to Schwab's pharmacy for a while, which they were able to take advantage of.
She was sitting at the soda fountain.
Yep.
And that's where she was discovered.
And I mean, it's true. And that's what everybody's dream is when they go to Hollywood, right? That they're going to be stumbled across and become famous. I thought it was interesting. She was her role actually replaced Jean Harlow.
Oh.
And if I remember right, Jean Harlow is the one who died in the car accident. And
I think so.
She's Mariska Hargitay's mom, and Mariska Hargitay's little girl was in the car when her mom got beheaded in the accident. All the kids were.
I think so, but
I think
don't
so,
know.
But I didn't look it up to verify, so don't quote me on it. But that was all very just tumultuous, So, but yeah, she was there to replace Jean Harlow, and as she became more famous, people would compare her to Jean Harlow all the time, not even knowing that's who she was replacing. So, yeah.
Wow.
And that's the story. I figured that one was, I mean, it's not light, but it's lighter.
Yes. I mean, we both talked about murders, but it wasn't
a serial killer rapist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No children were killed.
No children were killed. That's right. One of them was harmed.
Yes.
And emotionally grievously.
Yes.
But, yeah, a little lighter.
Can you just imagine, though, to have your whole life laid open in the newspaper every day and you have no control over it?
No.
I can because I have a good imagination, but just imagine how that must feel to have your story taken away from you and mistold and mishandled and lies.
And how many people do you think that she supposedly had affairs with that she never did? And it's just because she went out to dinner with a group of people and this man happened to be there. Or she was in a movie with this man and therefore they had an affair.
Or you're out with a group, because a lot of stuff is done as a publicity opportunities. Yes. So you have a gathering, you have a whole bunch of people and pictures are being taken. And just because your picture is taken with somebody doesn't mean you're sleeping with them.
Yeah. And, I did a little aside researching, just looking through Lana Turner's story. And she was an interesting person. She had an interesting career. And it was interesting because Cheryl Crane said that her movies often actually copied whatever she was dealing with in real life. Somehow they would get reflected in that. She wanted to have a child. Cheryl Crane, the reason she only had one child out of 7 marriages wasn't because she didn't want children. She had something that made her continuously have miscarriages. So Cheryl was the only child she successfully had, and even then, her doctors recommended what they called a therapeutic abortion when she was pregnant with Cheryl, and it was, this could kill you, it will kill her, like it has your other, God. And she said, no, I'm going to see it through. And in fact, Cheryl Crane was born with a condition that was because of what her mother had and barely lived. But she did. So, yeah. She was very much meant to be born, I guess. I was glad to see that she came out, and got to live as herself. Eventually, Cheryl Crane, and be open about her partner and all of that. Because of all the pressure, that puts so much pressure on people who aren't famous. Right? Mm-hmm. And she had to do this as always being not only the daughter of Lana Turner, but the daughter of Lana Turner who killed Johnny Stompanato. So,
that's so much pressure.
Just
so much spotlight.
But she did. She got clean and she got successful and she got happy.
Oh my God, we have a happy ending.
Yes!
that isn't just a conviction.
No.
I mean, or Eddie died in
that
prison.
She was able to be successful on her own.
Oh my God. What's wrong with us?
I know. And it does sound like her dad was intact. I mean, he's not mentioned much because he's not the famous one, but he got her working in his restaurant. And I imagine that helped.
They worked together. Yeah. Wow.
So, and even her getting to get a degree in it and like really contribute. So that was cool. Yeah.
Whew.
And I know that's one of the better known stories, but every once in a while I'm going to do one of the Hollywood stories.
And it's fun to take one of those well-known stories and break it down and say what actually happened.
Yeah.
Here's what the police report said.
Because we hear bits of it, but it's not like I've ever gone in-depth research. Like I did on Natalie Wood. Yeah. And eventually maybe one of us will do that one on here. And that's about untrue, but there's so many details to Natalie Wood's death that really just, that one will never be solved.
That was the drowning, wasn't it?
Yes. And she was terrified of water.
And there
Christopher
weren't...
Walken and her husband, was it Robert Wagner? Yes. And there was a whole flirtation going on with Christopher Walken. There was a lot of fighting. Robert Wagner and her had fought, and he was jealous of Christopher Walken and her, just kind of flirting with him. And there's so much to it. So much. I posted on my blog and got contacted by somebody who was writing about it and was talking. They were writing about it from a local, he was like a boat captain. Mm-hmm. I don't remember if he was their boat captain or if he was like from a neighboring boat, but they were writing it from his viewpoint. I think it must have been theirs.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, and so they contacted me about something.
Well, if you were on that boat that night, there's no way you can know. And
Christopher Walken has kept his mouth shut. I mean, he didn't see it happen, but he has very much kept it buttoned and not given in to the press because,
good for him.
I have to say, that's impressive.
Yes.
So, not that his career has ever been so hurting that he needed to get out there more. True. He's done well for himself because he's a good actor. He's creepy as fuck sometimes, but he's a good actor. But yeah, the Hollywood ones can be so interesting sometimes.
Yeah. So maybe we'll do more of that.
Yeah. And sometimes you just need a frothy Hollywood story instead of a...
Or a maple syrup heist.
Yes, instead of a dark.
I found one I can't wait to do. I've got a couple coming up.
Yay.
But yeah, I kind of can't wait to do them. One is not... Because I'll often do the conglomerate piece, like the Waffle House piece. So I'll find a thread and chase that down and go, wow, there's a whole lot. I can't fucking believe what happens at Waffle Houses. I think you should write your next horror anthology
about a Waffle House and the stories.
Yes.
I probably could. I wanted to do an intertwining. I wanted to do something like that for a long time. I thought about doing it for row houses like the ones we lived in for a while, and the ghetto, and all this. So many ways that people can intertwine. I love when people do that, but it takes more planning than I usually do.
Yeah, it does take a little bit of, plotting.
Forethought and plotting, which eventually I will do, because I'm going to write some mysteries. But anyway, folks, you can send us your story. What?
The question.
Do it.
It's your turn.
Okay. All right, so our question that'll be posted on Facebook is, what is your favorite Hollywood true crime? And that's the thing. We already said we might cover some. We might cover, especially if you tell us one that we didn't even know about.
Ooh, I just thought of another one I might do.
There's some really good, like, I've been Fatty Arbuckle story.
Yes.
And wasn't there one with the Superman actor? Anyway, one of the Superman actors. So, we want to hear, what's your favorite one?
Tell us. And tell us everything.
And also, if you have any other stories you want to send us for us to read on here, it doesn't have to do with any of the themes that we've covered. You can email that to us at mysteriesmonstersmayhem@gmail.com, or you can use the form at mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com. That's also where we actually put the titles of our episodes up early on that page, and it's where you can access recordings from the last couple. I think it posts the last 3 on there. So there's stuff on there. There's pictures. Who knows if we'll ever have anything else on there. Someday there'll be merch.
Someday.
On that website.
Someday.
So send us your stories and we'll not sing for you more if that's what you'd like.
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone paying. If you pay us, if you send us money,
we won't sing.
We won't sing.
Yeah, right. Like either of us have enough self-control to not do something on the
That is true, but my
promised.
children would both send money for that.
They probably would.
Because they unfortunately, because I love to sing. I know I'm tone deaf and I'm loud. So, and I know this. I know that I can't recreate a note that I hear, but I just love singing in the car and yeah.
I do as well.
Right?
I'm not actually tone deaf, but I'm not going to say I'm the best singer in the world ever. I won second once in a competition. So I guess I wasn't bad when I was a teenager.
Are you one of those people who thinks you can hit the high note
No.
but really can't?
Oh, no. I'm clearly an alto. That has never been in question. I remember there was an album from Madonna that came out, and it was the perfect pitch for me, and I could sing every song on that album. It had "This Used to Be My Playground." It was Sharon had that, and I was like, I can sing every song on here. Thank you, Madonna, because there weren't any crazy high pitched notes that I couldn't hit. So anyway, thank you for listening. Please like, rate, share, participate on the Facebook page. That'll be fun.
Yes.
We post pictures on Instagram. There are some that, because of the cropping, I can't put on there, and so those do get put on Facebook sometimes. But tell your
friends about us.
That's right. Because if people listen and we can get sponsors eventually, then we can keep going.
And I can eat pizza for dinner on Sunday.
Because right now, right? And then you can feed and be, like we said last time. And
send us.
We're the producers right now, right?
Yes. I was gonna say, if nothing else, send your rhubarb recipes to the email. I can't help it. I love rhubarb. You can never have enough good rhubarb recipes.
Someday I'd love to do the Black Dahlia. But
that's a huge topic.
It's also, I recently heard it from a cop who went back, a cold case cop who went back through it, and boy, have we been misinformed for a long time.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So, anyways, that is fascinating, but I need to be able to do it justice first, and that would be more than a day of research.
Yeah, and if you would like to say, hey, you mentioned X, I really think you should do that.
Yeah, then hit us with that.
Because we will throw out ideas, and if I do not write them down, by the time I get in my car to drive home, they are forgotten.
They're gone. I get so many ideas.
And then, but you get them in the shower. Or
like driving. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm like, what was that? I had it. Or right before I fall asleep. That's when I get my best story ideas. I start writing stuff sometimes because my brain is stupid. I hate it. But I'll write the opening and I'm in love with it and it's in my head. And then the next day I wake up and I've got little shreds of it left. And I'm like, no, it was beautiful. Sob. So anyway, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for
still being
here.
around.
Yes. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.